There's a world out there of every type of style we could have chosen to tell this story, but there's something about this story in particular that lent itself to photorealism. Scotland in the 1970s on a metal structure in the middle of the North Sea is an unfamiliar enough environment without adding an entire different style to the game, because that would make it almost alien, almost fantasy.
If you look at 70s pictures, they are all brown. There is like a brown filter on top of them. And then there are crazy patterns, wood veneer stuff everywhere. Fashion was really different from now.
Oil rigs or any kind of machinery or any kind of, somebody's living room or how they dressed. In America in 1975 or in, Eastern Europe in 1975 is incredibly different. If you lived in 1975, all the stuff you had would have been from the 60s. So you have to look earlier. Authenticity was the #1 driving factor behind every decision.
I think the researchers was this amazing bedrock for us, because as the game developed, we might suddenly realise, okay, what's a good reference for like waves crashing against the legs, or what does it look like in an early morning fog with the sort of twinkly lights coming through? And someone would think, oh, I remember I've seen a video on the BP archive, I think it's this one, we could go back, snapshot, get some screenshots and use that for ref. And we did that throughout the game, whether it was, we had a new area with bits of machinery, we had no idea how this other part of the oil rig functions.
There'll be even like archives that talks about how the drilling process works. What's a drilling mud? Why do you need a geological room? Obviously it wasn't mandatory, but I just basically spent time just actually understanding how the machines work, to the point that I mentioned to everyone and say, oh, this is how they worked, this is why we need this room. Sometimes the story sort of changed because of it, because it's like, oh, our main character needs to do something or go to this particular room, because actually that's how it worked in the actual oil rig back in the 70s.
At some point, it was, I think, reasonably late in production, we actually ran into a moment where we had set dressed almost every space with these, I think they're called IBC containers. They hold water. I put those everywhere. Ian put those everywhere. I think our whole team put them everywhere. And then suddenly someone in the team goes, oh, those weren't invented yet.
1992, I think they came out.
It makes you question everything, because I remember looking like, when were whiteboards invented? When were like lighters invented? When were flares invented?
You kind of marry yourself to the idea of authenticity, and this really cool thing comes out in 1976 and you're like, oh, should we just?
The actual oil rig also has to be somewhat of a homely environment in a certain sense, depending on like whoever's in charge of it. Actually, when you go into the rooms, you have obviously the canteen room, you have the bunk room, and you have one person called the camp boss, he's like a hotel manager. He'll be monitoring the whole crew.
I think oil rigs come in many sizes from the research that we've done. Like you can definitely have smaller oil rigs, and you can have like behemoths. It's like when you're inside of this rig, you have so much machinery, you have a lot of tight hallways because they have to be extremely efficient with their use of space.
Yeah, I don't think we really knew what the scale of the rig was going to be like at the beginning. I think I created the first exterior, which is the southern wall, and I just kind of made it as big as I thought looked cool. So we just kind of went, oh, yeah, that looks ominous and terrifying. Okay, we'll go with that. The level design team kind of went round the corner, which I never intended anyone to do, which then meant we had to build that as well. The environment expanded to fit the gameplay and the story we wanted to tell.
In the middle of production, Unreal Engine 5 was released. And with Lumen, we could suddenly do all of our lighting real time. So if Luke, our lighting artist, was working on something, he had the first pass done, he could just call in John or Laura and check it out, change it on the fly as they were just talking and trying things out. With Nanite, our environment art team, suddenly we didn't have certain limitations that are very common with video games. So yeah, new tech, we took a risk, and we feel like it paid off.
You want to get the details right, and if you get the details right, that makes you feel that you're there, which makes the horror more palpable.
I think what the horror element brought in was beauty and chaos, which really contrasted with the huge metal rig structure.
You know, don't even think it is an evil thing. Think it is a thing that's in the wrong place. Something that almost doesn't understand the space it's in. The reference board for the visuals at that end of the game is unrecognisable from the reference board at the start of the game.
I would really love for this to be an experience that stays with players long after they're finished playing. There's some horrors which are very visceral and you're very frightened in the moment, and there's others, like for me, Midsummer or Annihilation, which they just tick on in your brain. You just keep thinking about them again and again and again. It's really terrifying the way it stays with you.
I hope that this game makes people feel something and they feel empathy for the characters. And also just like, lastly, I hope they enjoy it, because like we've been working on it for years and it's just crazy that it's finally going to come out.
We hope to kind of make it a very grounded but very hopefully terrifying experiences for, for the audience.
But if you're a gamer or even a non-gamer and you've ever thought, do you know what? I really wish I was an oil rig in the 70s having the shit scared at me, then this is probably an experience for you.